"You're done here, doctor. Pack your things. You're fired." Dr. Emily Harper had just lost everything. No paycheck, no benefits, no backup plan. Her mortgage was due in 5 days. Her daughter's medication, $327 a month out of pocket, and all because she treated a wounded Marine for free. But the next morning, before sunrise, 200 Marines showed up outside the hospital, and what they brought with them would flip the entire system on its head. Welcome to Legendary Stories. Comment below where you're watching from, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. Emily Harper didn't plan to become a trauma surgeon. She wanted to be a writer. But one phone call changed everything. Her husband, Captain Daniel Harper, was killed in action. IED, Helmand Province. The body came back. The man she loved didn't. She had a toddler. She had student loans. And she had a choice. So she hung up her dream and picked up a scalpel. Years later, she wore the white coat, not at a fancy private hospital, but at a crumbling VA affiliate on the outskirts of town. She made just enough to keep the lights on, worked 12-hour shifts, bought generic cereal for her daughter to make the rent work. The other doctors drove Teslas. Emily drove a 10-year-old Subaru with a cracked bumper and an Army-strong decal, but she never missed a shift, never turned a patient away. Until one night, an old man shuffled into the ER, his breathing labored, his gait unsteady, his clothes neat but soaked in sweat, no wallet, no ID. Just a pair of worn dog tags and lungs that sounded like gravel. It was 11:43 p.m. when he stumbled through the automatic doors, one hand clutching his ribs, the other gripping a faded VA-issued cane. His name was Walter Briggs, 81 years old, retired Marine. He didn't complain, didn't shout, didn't even ask for help. He just stood there, eyes glassy, breath short, and waited for someone to notice. Emily was the only one who did. She glanced at the intake sheet. No insurance, no emergency contact. Chronic respiratory failure, complications from an old shrapnel wound, the chart said. The clerk had marked him as non-urgent. "He'll have to wait," said the nurse behind the desk. "Technically, he shouldn't even be here. He missed his VA appointment. Protocol says we redirect." But Emily wasn't wired for protocol, not when the man in front of her was shaking in his boots. Literally, she didn't ask permission. She just wheeled him back herself. Oxygen, fluids, pain control. She stayed an extra hour past her shift, sutured an ulcer that had opened near an old scar, cleaned the infection. And before he left, she handed him a warm blanket and said gently, "You're not a number here." She never got his full story. But what she gave that night was everything. She clocked out at 2:07 a.m., didn't think twice, didn't write it up, didn't bill a single cent, just did her job, the one that didn't pay enough but still demanded everything. She didn't mention Walter to anyone the next day, didn't expect a thank you, didn't even know if he'd made it home all right, until Monday morning. She was halfway through morning rounds when her name crackled over the hospital intercom. "Dr. Harper, please report to administration immediately." The walk down the corridor felt longer than usual. She noticed the glances, the quiet shift in energy, as if the walls already knew. In the office, her department chair, 2 HR reps, and a printed report sitting face down on the table. The chair cleared his throat, didn't look up. "We reviewed surveillance footage from early Saturday morning." A pause. "You treated a patient who wasn't admitted, who bypassed protocol." Emily didn't flinch. "He was in respiratory distress. His vitals were crashing." One of the reps tapped the paper. "He didn't have insurance. He wasn't in the system. You exposed us to liability." Emily stayed silent. Because what do you say when doing the right thing becomes the wrong thing on paper? "You're done here, doctor. Pack your things. You're fired." No warning. No severance. Just silence. She walked out with her stethoscope in one hand, her badge in the other. Mortgage due in 5 days. Her daughter's medication, $327 a month. Gone. She sat in the parking lot, gripping the wheel, jaw tight, eyes wet, all because she treated one old Marine for free. She didn't go home right away, just sat there, watching nurses walk in and out of the ER doors like nothing had happened. The irony? She'd saved a life and lost her livelihood. By midnight, the hospital lights blurred through her windshield. She drove home in silence. Her daughter was already asleep. She didn't tell her what happened. Not yet. But across town, someone else had already made a call. Walter Briggs. Turns out, no emergency contact didn't mean no connections. Not for a man like him. Retired Master Sergeant, 3 tours, Bronze Star. He once led a logistics unit responsible for combat medevacs. Still had numbers in his phone that most people would never believe. And one of those numbers belonged to a commanding officer, still active, still listening. Walter didn't ask for anything, didn't rant, didn't rage. He just said, "There's a doc down at the VA. She didn't ask for my record, didn't ask for my benefits, just saved my life." Then he hung up. What happened next wasn't in the headlines, wasn't posted online. But before dawn, something started moving, quiet, coordinated, and aimed straight at the hospital. She didn't know someone had been watching, not from the security cameras, not from behind a clipboard, but from the bedside, 4 curtain bays down. A young nurse, first year, night shift. She'd seen the whole thing, the trembling man, the quiet care, the blanket. She didn't say anything at the time, but that weekend her brother came home, a lance corporal with a Purple Heart and half a lung. When he heard what Emily Harper had done, he made a call, then another, then another. Within 48 hours, word had spread, Marine forums, group chats, VA halls. She stayed after her shift. She never sent a bill. She said, "You're not a number here." By Sunday night, a screenshot of Emily's termination letter was circulating. No address, no phone, just the words. Doctor fired for treating a veteran for free. It wasn't a headline. It was a call to arms. Retired colonels, active duty, reservists, widows, Gold Star kids. They didn't rage. They didn't protest. They planned. Because to them, she wasn't just a doctor. She was one of their own. And before sunrise the next morning, they showed up, not with signs, but in uniform. 200 Marines, boots aligned, medals shining. What they brought with them would flip the entire hospital system on its head. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. From the ICU windows to the cafeteria hallway, everyone stopped moving. One by one, heads turned toward the entrance, where a wall of uniforms stood, shoulder to shoulder, unmoving. Some held folded flags, some held signs with nothing but a name. Dr. Emily Harper. Inside, the administrator's office went quiet. A junior nurse dropped her clipboard, and the head of HR, who signed Emily's termination letter, pulled back the curtain, then froze. Because in the center of the formation stood Walter Briggs, upright, saluting. The hospital doors slid open, slow, mechanical, but no one inside moved. Not until Walter took the first step forward, his medals catching the morning light. Behind him, a sea of uniforms followed, 200 strong, no shouting, no chanting, just boots and silence. At the front desk, the charge nurse stumbled backward. We can't allow—" But Walter didn't stop, didn't blink. He walked the same path Emily had taken every morning, right past the security desk, past the donor wall, down the hall, toward administration. The Marines flanked both sides, silent, watchful, unbending. When Walter reached the main office, he paused, then knocked once. The department chair opened the door, pale, speechless. "Can I help you, sir?" he stammered. Walter didn't respond. He simply turned and gestured. 3 Marines stepped forward, each holding something different. A folded flag, a clipboard, a sealed envelope. They didn't explain. They didn't need to. Not yet. But behind those objects was a message the hospital would never forget. Emily stood in the parking lot, still in scrubs, still stunned. She'd only come back to return her badge. But the moment she saw them, lined up, still as statues, she stopped breathing. A Marine stepped forward. Not a recruiter, not a politician, just a corporal, maybe 22. "Ma'am," he said, offering her the folded flag, "on behalf of every veteran you never turned away, we stand with you." Emily didn't speak. She couldn't. The lump in her throat was too thick. Her hands trembled as she accepted the flag. Then another Marine stepped forward, this one older, gray at the temples. "Dr. Harper," he said, "you didn't just stitch a wound. You reminded us what service looks like." He handed her the clipboard. The weight of it was more than paper. 87,432 of us signed this, he continued. A petition calling for your reinstatement. Veterans, nurses, medics, people who know what it means to serve and what it means to be seen. Emily scanned the signatures. Some typed, some scribbled in shaky hands. All real, all willing to fight for her. And then came Walter. No cane this time, just pride in his posture. He handed her the check. "Start something new," he said, "somewhere that remembers who we are." She looked down at the amount and gasped. Enough for a year's salary, enough for a lease, enough to keep fighting. She didn't cry, not yet. She just looked up and asked, "Why me?" Walter smiled. "Because you remembered us, before anyone else did." The story made national news by noon. Local outlets were first, stunned by the silent formation of uniforms outside a hospital. Then came the veterans groups, the podcasts, the headlines. Doctor fired for treating veteran. 200 Marines respond. By 3 p.m., the hospital board called an emergency meeting. By 4, they issued a statement. "We deeply regret the circumstances surrounding Dr. Emily Harper's dismissal. She is welcome to return immediately." But the truth? The board didn't reverse course out of guilt. They reversed because the waiting room was full of uniforms, because donors started pulling out, because the nurses stopped showing up. They reversed because they had no choice. But Emily? She'd already made up her mind. She stood at the podium outside the hospital, cameras flashing, reporters shouting. Emily stepped to the mic, but before she spoke, she looked at the crowd, at the Marines in the back, at her daughter clutching the folded flag. And then, finally, "I won't return to a place where compassion is cause for termination." Then she turned and walked away. She didn't take their offer. She didn't want a job. She wanted a mission. And 2 weeks later, she opened the doors to a new clinic, the Daniel Harper Center, named for her late husband, built for veterans who'd slipped through the cracks. The first week, there was no budget for signage, no staff but a nurse who volunteered after hearing her story. But by the second week, a local construction company had donated new drywall, a retired surgeon offered to work weekends, and the mailbox overflowing with envelopes, checks, thank you letters, photos of sons and daughters in uniform. A kid dropped off his lemonade stand profits with a note that said, "For the doctor who helped my grandpa." Emily read every one. She didn't post about it, didn't go viral. But the waiting room stayed full. The coffee stayed warm. And for the first time in years, Emily Harper felt like she'd finally gone home. And this time, no one could take it away. If this story moved you, tap the like button and send it to someone who still believes in loyalty that shows up unannounced. What part hit hardest? Tell us in the comments. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe. Because sometimes the quietest heroes leave behind the loudest legacies.